Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Tonight we're going to be looking at Strange Tales 2, the second three-part miniseries published by Marvel Comics. This time, this is from 2010, and the shtick is the same as the first miniseries. It's getting indie artists. At the time, they were indie artists. Some of them have gone on to become, big-time creators in the mainstream comic world. But at the time, they were just, independent creators who weren't associated with doing mainstream comics to draw, typical Marvel characters. And there's a lot of fun stuff in here, once again. And as you can see just by these covers, it's all over the place. It's so fun. So let's get started. I did want to mention, though, really quick, this is kind of weird. So the first series was Marvel Knights. That was during the 2000s. That was almost like a prestige line at Marvel to get the better creators to do it. And then it became Max, which was basically kind of the same thing, but more like saying, hey, this is for adults. And that's where we first saw, Jessica Jones, Alias, and the Punisher got even more violent under Max. But then the second and third issue go back to Marvel Knights. I just wanted to point that out. I don't know, I thought that was weird. Maybe because the first issue has more controversial content that they were like, okay, Max is like our adult line, almost like Marvel's Vertigo. But I just thought that was odd. Okay, here we go, number one. Oh my God, guys. Raphael Grampá. So beautiful. And just Raphael Grampá doing the Avengers is so nice. I love his stuff. Of course, he's most famous for Mesmo Delivery and his great graphic novel that he wrote and drew. So we start off once again with Nick Bertozzi doing these little funny gag strips about Uatu the Watcher. And he's still in jail. It turns out, I forgot to mention this last time, so it turns out this guy that we thought was Uatu the Watcher the whole time is actually not. He's just some guy who's been imitating Uatu the Watcher. Now, Uatu, when he gets out of jail, Uatu shows up. His name's Philip, this guy. He's like, Philip, I'm kind of on a sabbatical. I'm on a vacation. I was kind of flattered by your portrayal of me, and I found myself incredibly curious. I've decided to spend my holiday with you, living as you do, seeing the world through your entirely unique eyes. Which isn't the best idea, because Philip's like a little degenerate. So the first thing, Philip gets back at the leader, who is his cellmate. And once he beat him at chess, we saw that last time, in the last video. And he's basically having Uatu hold him down so he can kick his ass. And then he takes him to a bar, and Philip gets him drunk. And then I love this, they're at a strip club, and there's a Black Elektra stripping, Ms. Marvel and Namor. Red Skull in a thong is serving drinks. In the crowd is J. Jonah Jameson hanging out with Spider-Man, strangely enough, The Thing, and all these various characters. So Uatu's taking a walk on the wild side. Okay, first we start off with the first story is by Raphael Grampá. He wrote it and drew it. And this is kind of like an underground fight club, but it's all involving mutants. So we see Sabretooth. We see this woman in the crowd. She stands out from everyone else because everyone else looks like a mutant. They're like, this is weird looking people. But she's like a normal looking woman, and she's watching. And then backstage after the main events, we see Logan walk in. We see Cyber. We see all these like characters in the Wolverine universe, Sabretooth, Cyber, and Wolverine gets to his locker and he finds a letter. It says, "Dear Logan." He sniffs it, and his claws rip right through it. He starts talking with Slade Wilson, the alias of Deadpool. He's part of this fight club too. So it does seem to be like almost like WWF, where they like talk about the fight beforehand. These guys are actors, so like, "Oh, I'm looking forward to working with you. So like, are you supposed to win? What's the deal here?" But it does seem very bloody. It's like UFC, maybe more than WWE. And so now the match begins between Deadpool and Wolverine. Wolverine's whole shtick is that he lets himself be wounded. He doesn't even bare his adamantium claws. He's barely fighting back because he knows the crowd wants that. And God, I'm sorry. I get distracted by this art. I love this art so much. I love Raphael Grampá. And so the fight proceeds. Deadpool is just sticking swords at him and knives and everything. And Wolverine's just taking it. We keep seeing this woman in the crowd. And now we hear her thoughts in this captions. She says, "The last time we made love, I became something that I could never be. Playing out these roles, it sounded like fun. I never realized how horrific it would be. Now I'm afraid of myself." So basically it's like, in this version of Wolverine, he's this kind of super masochist because, he could be wounded over and over again and never die. So it's implying that he likes it. So he met this woman and he basically was like, as foreplay, he was like, here's an ice pick. Just stab me a lot. And I think she's scared because she kind of got turned on. She kind of thought it was like, oh, this is kinky and hot. And look at this horrible scene. It's just blood right everywhere. Wolverine's just laughing with all through, he's wounded. And she is just like, oh, fuck, what have I done? But, luckily she realized this is a disease, a demented addiction. She basically says, yeah, the reason why you do this is because you just want to be hurt. You're addicted to the pain. So finally, Wolverine pops his claws. It's time to now fight back and be the champ. He basically tells Deadpool, is like, the secret to being good at this is not to be young and heal fast. The secret is to have a good relationship with pain. Basically, to be able to take it until it's your move. He chops off Deadpool's head. Of course, Deadpool has the healing factor, so he'll be fine. I mean, he's chopped his arm off. His head's missing. The crowd goes wild. Now we go back to the letter from the woman. And she basically says, "Why did you do this to me? You used my love to turn me into a monster for your own satisfaction. You love to feel the pain, don't you, Logan? I was nothing but a fix for you, and you're nothing but an addict. I need someone who's going to take care of me. I hope one day you'll learn to take care of yourself." And then we realize that's the letter. He was the Dear John letter he got in the locker. And so it's after the fight. He's finally reading it. And he says at the end, "I can't heal from every kind of hurt, darling." Pretty heavy story about love, even though this is an alternate Wolverine. I don't think Wolverine's really like that. But really great story. So now we have The Fabulous Frogman. And this is by Jean Wen Yang. American-born Chinese guy. I've never read his stuff. This is the first time I've ever read his stuff. And we see the Frogman's son, who's basically just a big dork. I guess if your dad was Frogman, you don't have much chance to be cool or anything. And the story starts off in front of a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff, which I just saw a video about this, how I guess it was a thing. Chuck E. Cheese was notorious for fights breaking out because there was all these parents, they served booze, and then their kids were running around going crazy. And there was many police calls to Chuck E. Cheese's all throughout like the past few decades. Every time there was a party, some drunken parents would get in an altercation. So now we see this son of Frogman. His name's Eugene Patillo. And he kind of flashbacks to when he was trying to be a hero. His dad was a villain. He was always trying to be a superhero with his dad's suit. And he was always fucking up, like clumsily stumbling into the other heroes if you ever had a team up. But somehow, he'd always win. Even though he would totally stumble and make a mistake, he'd like land on the villain and conk him out. And so he had guilt about this. It was almost like fear of success. All the other superheroes, they trained for years so they could win. Basically, all he had to do was lose control. Just dumb luck. And then we see it happen over and over again. Even like, I love how it starts with like the lamest hero here. Villain. It's Dr. Doom. And then even Galactus. He just knocks Galactus over with his clumsiness. I thought that was a great touch. But of course, all the other superheroes realized this, and they were just kind of like, nah, you're kind of lame. We don't want to do team-ups with you. And so we see him put a blindfold on. He says, I don't feel guilt anymore. You know, this is my destiny. He thinks maybe his subconscious knows Kung Fu, that's why he keeps luckily stumbling into victory. And we see him, even though he's got the blindfold on under his costume, he just springs, he bounces out into the parking lot. And he just says, I trust everything just works out. Kind of an interesting little character sketch. Next we have Dash Shaw again, doing some really, I'm sorry, not Dash Shaw. This is Frank Santoro, who we just looked at his amazing graphic novel and Storyville. This is so different. I had no idea. That's why I was confused. I was like, oh, wait, this is Frank Santoro. And this is about the Silver Surfer. And it's very impressionistic. It's just, we see Silver Surfer being with Zen La, the love of his life. And then Galactus appears and pulls him away. I'm not sure how I feel about this art. I love Frank Santoro in Storyville. This kind of actually just looks cheesy to me. With all these weird, like, airbrushy colors. Maybe it's not airbrush, whatever it is. And now we see Silver Surfer riding his cosmic surfboard throughout the universe. This does seem like every Silver Surfer comic you've ever read, where Silver Surfer is played with whiny pity for self-pity. You know, it's like, yeah, that's why nobody ever liked Silver Surfer. We liked him when he was just the Herald of Galactus and those great stories, but then when he got a solo title, all he did was go around whining and crying all the time. The sad refrain of duty, the stars so close and my love so far away from me. It's kind of, there's some interesting things going on with the art, but something about these colors, it just seems kind of cheesy to me. It almost seems like like the paintings on a van in the 70s, you know, airbrush paintings. So I'm not even quite sure what happens here. Galactus zaps him, and then I don't know if this is just his mind, but he's back with Shalabal on his home planet in basically paradise. It looks great. But I think that's just in his head. But who knows? I'm not sure what's going on in this comic. It's very, like I said, kind of just impressionistic, and it is kind of interesting. I kind of like looking at the art, but also there's something about it rubs me the wrong way. Next we have this cartoonist I'm not familiar with. It's Kate Beaton. Actually, she was in the last Strange Tales, I think, but I forgot what she did. This is called A Distraction. Spider-Man's thinking, God, Kraven's driving me nuts. I'm going to get him out of my hair tonight. So he sends him a fake invitation to a prom. And so Kraven says, I must go on the hunt for a date. I kind of love this. Just these three women are chatting at a cafe, and Kraven just puts a bag over one of their heads. You know, he's a hunter. He shows up at the prom and dumps her out. Says, this is my date. She's like, I'd like to go home now. He's like, you may not go home until tonight has been magical. So she's like, yeah, fine. So they dance the night away. And Spider-Man is in his hammock saying, awesome. For once, Kraven doesn't give me shit. Next, we have Dazzler in The After Party. This is by Jillian Tamaki, another artist I'm not very familiar with. It's kind of a weird take on Dazzler. She has a rock band here. They don't seem that successful. You know, they play clubs. And she has this, like, asshole manager / boyfriend who just seems like this short little dweeb who's not really worthy enough for Dazzler. I mean, Dazzler's a super hot, you know, talented superhero, mutant. And he's just this little Weasley type guy who's like keeping her from her friends, being just like this, you know, patronizing, almost father figure. Just like, oh, you've got interviews tomorrow. You can have a drink with your band. And she's kind of bummed about it. Now these two guys show up and they're like, you hold an open auditions? Turns out they're not really concerned about auditions. They're these villains. They're basically like, they say that they're Bawdy Morass. I guess they're a two-man group. And you're an uninvited guest here in Baltimore. Basically, we're going to kick your ass. And Dazzler says, we're about to leave. You don't have to do this. But they're like, yeah, fuck you. So one of them has a whip. This guy who looks just like a guy in a loincloth and one of those Vietnamese hats. He whips her, and they basically start beating on her. They're kicking her ass. And the whole time they're insulting her. They're like, we find your music derivative. They're beating the shit out of her. But then the music from the club, she can hear it. And she can use that for her power. So if you guys don't know, Dazzler could turn sound waves into light energy. So I don't know why she just doesn't have a boombox all the time. Because she could always be powerful. But, so luckily the music from the club ekes out into the alley. There's enough sound for her to build up some energy. Kind of neat little crazy shit going on here. Almost psychedelic. And then she beats the crap out of these guys. Actually, she kills one of them. She destroys them. We see her foot here. Next we have Red Skull. This is by Shannon Wheeler, the Too Much Coffee Man guy. And I kind of like this one. I've never been a fan of Too Much Coffee Man. I haven't read much. But, so the Red Skull, you know, the Nazis created him. He's the ultimate villain. He has no empathy, no mercy. He's pure evil. I like this line here. It says, he is evil. He is the evilest evil this side of Evil Town. Where is Evil Town? No one knows. But now it turns out that the Red Skull has been living in this, like, I think South Seas Island. And he's married and he has children. And every night he goes out hunting and he brings food home to his family. He hears this, like, sound. And it turns out these logging trucks are back. They're trying to ruin his beautiful paradise. And Red Skull says, I have a plan. I'm going to take care of these guys. Now, even the caption here says, what is the plan? Red Skull's fucking evil. This must be an evil plan. But no, all Red Skull does is, like, jump in front of the trucks and kind of make a distraction so his friends can pour sugar in their tanks. Now, back at Avengers Mansion, Captain America reads an article about eco-terrorism, and obviously the Red Skull is behind it. I must go stop him. So he shows up. Captain America flies to this island, and Red Skull's like, I'm not evil. I'm defending my village, wives, and friends. I've been careful not to hurt anyone. Captain America's skeptical. And he's like, Red Skull's like, I've been living in this forest harmoniously. It's taught me many things. So when Captain America attacks him, he just throws this small toad at him that will paralyze him. But it won't hurt him. It'll just kind of paralyze him. So Captain America's like, I can't move. This is my end. And he's like, no, I'm not going to kill you. I'll actually save you using a little medicinal root, and I'll make you back to normal. I know you're a good guy, so you'll let me save my village. Now you understand what's going on. I don't think Shannon Wade was ever drawn like this. It's this kind of weird, old comic book, rugged, rough style. I kind of like it. Like, that panel looks great to me. And then Red Skull basically says, I've turned over a new leaf. I must pay for my sins. Take me now and punish me. So now Captain America's back at Avengers Mansion talking to Thor. And Captain America says, I think he's learned that working within the system is the greatest power of all. And Red Skull's in jail. He says, prison is freedom when my heart is warm knowing my village is safe. But then we see the village. The loggers have won. All the trees are cut down. There's like a mall, a shopping center, and all of the villagers are just like, hey, you want to go shopping or should we go see a movie? Like, their culture has been obliterated. Now we have Dash Shaw. So Dash Shaw doing Spider-Man. I love this. Dash Shaw just going crazy. This is called The Marvel of Mysterio. So Spider-Man's in this trap. It involves film cameras and mirrors. He knows it's Mysterio. Of course it is. See, a lot of these comics like this, you kind of understand Strange Tales, like why Marvel would publish this. It's like, it's kind of funny. Almost like the old What The comics or Not Brandeck. But this is the stuff where I'm just like, God. They would never allow shit like this now. Just having this complete creative freedom. Dash Shaw is just doing whatever the fuck he wants. Look at Spider-Man's design there. It's totally off model. So basically he's in these mysterious fucking with his mind, which is perfect for Dash Shaw to draw all this cool, weird shit with all the weird coloring. And so Spider-Man gets out of the trap, and Mysterio is crestfallen. He's like, my tears are fogging the inside of my helmet. It's all lost. I failed once again. And then this last page is very weird. Has nothing to do with the rest of the story. Okay, these captions are in quotes. And I think it's Tobey Maguire from an interview talking about the famous upside-down kiss scene in Spider-Man 1 or 2. I guess rain was going up his nose. He could barely breathe. So he had to suck air through the corner of his mouth. It's kind of an interesting anecdote. You don't think about that when you see the movie. It's just like, oh, what a romantic scene. But yeah, he could barely breathe because it was in rain. Just a very weird way to end the strip. So next we have Kevin Huizenga. And this is a very weird one. So we see these like cutesy versions. Wolverine confronting Silver Surfer. Look at this panel here. I just love that. And it's basically like Wolverine fighting Silver Surfer. Sticks his claws in his skull. Silver Surfer, because of that, now his skull's open. All this cosmic power comes out of his skull. And so he aims it at Wolverine. And basically turns Wolverine into just a skeleton. He rips away all of his flesh. That's a pretty cool thing right here. Silver Surfer, like, in front of this dimensional portal. And then I love this, how he's just an adamantium skeleton, and then a second later, heal. And Wolverine's back to normal. I listen to a lot of nerdy podcasts about superhero, all kinds of comics, but they talk about superhero comics a lot. Apparently, in canon now, Wolverine, you could obliterate his body as long as there's one cell left of Wolverine. He'll regenerate. It's not just like chop off his arm and it'll grow back. So that's the in canon. So basically Wolverine will never be killed, ever. And so they continue fighting. And then all of a sudden it cuts back. It's like, okay, guys, thanks. Turn in your... they're actors in a movie. They've got those suits on. What is it called? Motion capture suits. And then they go fill out some forms in the office. And we realize that these guys are just two pathetic actors who are at the mercy of this big studio. So next we have Jeff Lemire. And this is we start off, we're in Canada. And we see these Mounties. And there's this like captain here, Captain LaFleur. His subordinate walks in and says, Captain, the men have returned. You have to see for yourself. Now one of them, he's got his arm ripped off. Oops, I just spoiled it. And he says, what happened to the other men? He said, they're all dead. It took them the Wendigo. Now, if you know Marvel Universe history, the Wendigo is up in Canada. He's kind of like a Bigfoot Sasquatch, but he's way meaner. And so they totally think they're up against this Wendigo. Captain LaFleur says, no more men are going out. I don't want to risk anyone's life. I'm going out. I'm going to take care of this fucker. Because I'm Captain LaFleur. I'm a badass. So he goes out, and as soon as he starts walking, he gets his foot caught in a bear trap. Sorry, in a bear trap. Kind of sound like fucking John Kennedy III or whatever the hell that guy's name is. Robert Kennedy II or whatever, Jr. This bear shows up, a grizzly bear. And then all of a sudden, a giant hand grabs the grizzly bear and burns him. Because it's the Man-Thing. Anything that knows fear burns at the Man-Thing's touch. Now, Captain LaFleur basically earlier said in his captions, just like, he has no fear. So Man-Thing leaves him alone. So Captain LaFleur kind of chases after him a little and says, what are you? Of course, Man-Thing doesn't answer because he can't. This is called A Civilized Thing, by the way. That's the name of the story. Not much of a story, but it's just an excuse to show Man-Thing. Next, we have another Jonan Vasquez story. This time more in his cutesy style. I think, not that I know much about Jonan Vasquez, but I think this is more his squee style as opposed to his Johnny the Homicidal Maniac style. We see these kids playing in a park, and all of a sudden they see this weird guy like mowing these hot dogs. And it's Wolverine. Now, Wolverine has seen better days. Wolverine seems quite overweight. And these kids are freaking out. They're like, oh my God, Wolverine, I love you. Wolverine, you're so great. And pretty soon, Wolverine just starts whining about women. It's like, she left me, guys. This is the third one this month. No women want to really date me. They just see me as the glamorous bad boy who's good for a quick one. But I just want to fight a woman who wants to love me. And of course, his kids are just like, what? This is lame. Wolverine's not nearly as cool as he thought. But he keeps whining to these kids. And so he's like binge eating because he's so sad. He's like, to hell with women. It's just me and these wieners. That's all I want. But then, of course, he says, oh, who am I kidding? I just want someone to hug me and hold me. He keeps whining, and these kids are really getting perturbed. Then a sentinel shows up, and he sees Wolverine, and even the sentinel is just like, oh, man, he is so pathetic looking. I don't even want that on my scorecard. The other sentinels will laugh at me if I kill him in this state. So he's just like, well, do any of you kids have weird powers? Unusual abilities? And one of the kids says, yeah, my buddy can do the thing where it looks like you're taking your thumb off. What is that? How do you do that thing? That thing that you trick little kids with? And so the sentinel just says, yeah, that's good enough. And he takes the kid, throws him in the air, and fries him, and just incinerates him. And so the other kid says, okay, I'm going to go now. But then Wolverine's all like, wait, where are you going? He's like, I'm just going home. It's pretty boring, really. He's like, sounds great. I'll come with you. And so now this poor kid is to deal with Wolverine crying on his sofa, still eating hot dogs. Kind of funny, kind of pathetic. Next we have Nicholas Gorwich again, the Perry Bible Fellowship guy. And I think this is like one of the few times he's done more than one page. It's a 2-pager. Galactus is talking to Magneto. An alliance could prove most advantageous. Consider my powers at your command, Galactus. He's a really great illustrator. He says, I pronounce the minute herald. And then we see Galactus's house, and basically Magneto is just a refrigerator magnet holding up a school test. We have the creator biographies and the next issue preview, which you can probably tell is Jaime Hernandez. Okay, so now we have Strange Tales 2, number 2. God, I love this cover. It's all the hotties of the early Marvel universe, and all these villains are all ogling them, and just even Sandman's in the sand here. They're all just like, bah, boom. God, Jaime is such a good artist. I mean, I don't want him to stop doing what he's doing, because it's great. But I would also love Jaime Hernandez to clone himself and just do like Marvel 1965 and just draw comics like this about the old school Marvel universe. So of course we start off with another Nick Bertozzi strip about Uatu, and now with his friend Philip. And basically we see that Philip is just a really foul guy. And unfortunately Uatu has this weird idea that he wants to live like him. It's not a good idea though. But there's this thing where he shows Uatu his favorite thing. So he walks these dogs, then they put a biscuit on their nose, and all the dogs start licking them, and they both love it. They're just like, hee hee hee, like giggling like school kids. So Uatu is just like, this has been the best vacation ever, Philip. So now we start off with Old School Rules by Gilbert Hernandez. And this is just another piece of nostalgia. You know, Gilbert and Jaime Hernandez grew up reading these old Marvel comics. And this is pretty much just like, oh man, I liked Marvel Comics back in 1964, 65. So we see Tony Stark. He basically has had his new Ditko designed armor for a year, and he's kind of giving a toast to his old armor. And now all of a sudden this guy shows up in his place. He's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Toro, the one-time partner of the original Human Torch. And Tony Stark's a total fanboy. He's like, oh my God, you're part of the reason why I became a superhero. And he's like, God, I've always dreamed about like teaming up with you. And he says, well, actually, I need your help. We can, because I've got a lead on my partners, on the Human Torch's mysterious whereabouts. But a mad scientist apparently is hiding him. But I have to trade him your old suit. A lot of people think your old suit was a robot, and this guy's into artificial intelligences. You know, that's why he has the Human Torch, who is basically an android. So they both head out. Tony's in his old armor again. He says it's like riding a bike. And they make it out to this mad scientist's place. It's the leader. So his, flunkies here, these weird androids attack them. And then Toro says, I'll find you, Torch, I'll find you. Iron Man has killed all these little weird gummy androids, but they've gummed up his works. It's almost like they're bubble gum. And he feels bad for Toro. He's like, oh, Human Torch isn't there. Toro just wanted to believe it so bad. Leader says, now that I see you up close, I realize you're not a robot at all. And that's pretty much the end. Not much of a story. Kind of disappointing for Gilbert Hernandez. I expected something a lot more fun. But it really does seem to be like just like a nostalgic fan love letter, you know, to old superhero comics. Next, we have his brother, Jaime Hernandez, with colors by Laura Allred. Sorry. I'm a little drunk tonight, so that's why I've been talking so badly. So this is called Love in the Space Phantom. We see the Space Phantom. Obviously, he's a fan of all the Marvel hotties of 1965. He cuts them out of comics. And then he reads a comic, and Sue Storm is inviting Wasp to a weekend beach party blast, girls only. And Space Phantom was like, I gotta get into that party. God, this artist is so perfect. Got him join the Enchantress. So Space Phantom gets to Earth, and Space Phantom can take over anyone's persona. He can take over their body, and then their original body gets sent into another dimension. So first he just happens to see the Enchantress, so he turns into her. Seems like he's kind of getting off on all the attention he's getting. So he shows up at the beach. Well, she shows up at the beach, and all the Marvel sweet things from 1965 are hanging out at the beach. And he's losing it. He's just like, oh my God. So Enchantress says, hey girls, I'm here, let's swing. And they're like, you're a villain. No villains allowed. And, Space Phantom had no idea Enchantress was a villain. So then he sees Namor's, Namora? I think this is Submariner's like main squeeze. And he takes her over. When she shows up at the party, there's obvious, Sue Storm has that whole thing with Namor. He's like the third wheel, and she kind of has a crush on him. So she kind of kicks her out. She just uses it as an excuse that humans and Atlanteans are adversaries. But Scarlet Witch is like, oh yeah, it couldn't be because you're still gaga over certain Atlantic Atlantean prince. So then she gets this pinch in her butt when she's lying in the sand. It's Sandman. Or maybe he bit her. So he likes to show up there and hide and just check out these girls. So then she says, oh, wait, I'll just pretend to be one of the people who's at the party. So Alicia Masters is there. She doesn't realize she's blind. Or sorry, he doesn't. Space Phantom doesn't realize Alicia Masters is blind. So she shows up and she starts dancing. But of course she like walks into the dock because she's blind. And it makes Space Phantom like pop out. And they're like, it's a Space Phantom. Chase him out of here. And then he finally flies away out back to space. And he says, I'll take a Space Phantom at any old day. I love this woman who looks like Space Phantom of his race. Like just this homely woman. Next, we have another Jeffrey Brown story. This is called The Uncanny X-Men in Indecision. And this is just the kind of typical of Jeffrey Brown. It's just about like relationships and Cyclops is like really kind of insensitively talking to Wolverine about his souring relationship with Jean, even though he knows that Wolverine loves Jean. And Scott basically says she wants space. And Wolverine tries to give him some good advice. He says, yeah, give her some space. And Cyclops realizes what a bad idea that was. He's like, God, I can't believe I was opening up to Wolverine like that. Maybe I'll ask Professor X. This is kind of a funny turn where, of course, Professor X is psychic. He knows that Cyclops is heading his way, thinking about asking about this touchy romantic thing. And so Professor X makes him forget what he came in for. As soon as he walks into the room, Cyclops is like, I can't remember what I was going to ask you. And so Charles Xavier's like, well, just let me know whenever you remember. I'm always here for you. That was kind of funny. Then Wolverine talks to Jean, and he kind of, he's not that sleazy about it, but he's just all like, yeah, you got to be careful, Jean. Some of these guys, they'll just start to get jealous and controlling, when they don't want to give you space. And she gives him a hug and calls him Logan. And he's like, she called me Logan. That was awesome. But then there's an alarm, and it's the Sentinels. And all the X-Men assemble. And all of Cyclops' plans involve either Colossus throwing Wolverine at the Sentinel, Jean lifting him with her telekinetic powers, Rogue flying up and throwing them at the Sentinel. And then finally the Sentinel just melts Wolverine. And Cyclops is like, great, Wolverine acts as a decoy. And then Jean kind of realizes like, oh, Scott, I think I don't need so much space. I've been wrong-headed. And poor Wolverine is just like this crisp. He's just like a briquette. And he's just like, don't touch me. Fuck you all. He's bummed. And then next we have, this is an artist, I'm not sure who they are, so I'm going to look on my list here. I've never seen this artist. Oh, it's Mr. Sheldon, but I think his real name is Sheldon Vela, or it's Vea, maybe. This is a very strange story. We see this police captain, Eleanor Ramstein. She's dealing with this situation. There's this, the mayor's triplet daughters are being held hostage by this supervillain. I guess he's a Satanist. He's going to sacrifice them. This Eleanor Ramstein's pretty tough. And then all of a sudden, Ghostbad shows up. So this is kind of like a weird pastiche of Ghost Rider if he was a cop. So, his car is all flaming. And I guess he's like also this heavy metal guy who has an electric guitar. So he shows up, he jumps into the building. We see the triplets here all tied up. he's got this wicked, almost satanic heavy metal guitar. And he starts singing this heavy metal song with these like cheesy metal lyrics. And while he's singing it, he starts fighting the guy. It turns out these three triplets, they're actually demons too, like Ghost Rider women. They're like, skull, and they start flaming, and they kill the bad guy. And then Ghost Rider rides off with them, probably to have some kind of satanic orgy. Next we have Spider-Man in Little Lies. This is by a guy named Paul Mayberry. Totally unfamiliar with this guy. I gotta say, there's a little part of his art that reminds me of Paul Pope. It's not nearly as good though, but it's not bad. I kind of like it. So we see Spider-Man attacking. I can't remember this guy's name. It was from the 90s or 80s. Not Venom. Rabbit, or I don't know, Vermin. And so basically the whole shtick of the story is that Spider-Man always has to fight these guys. He always gets beat up, and he always has to lie to everyone he knows. He's always got Band-Aids. He's got black eyes. He always has to make up excuses. We see him get burned by Electro. He says he stuck his fork in the toaster. Sandman beats the crap out of him. He says that, it was a sandbag hit me in the face. I like when he's fighting Dr. Octopus here. He just says, your haircut's stupid. Because it is. So when he's home with Aunt May's like, Peter, is there something you need to tell me? I'm worried about you. You always have these bruises. And he says, no, I'm just fine. And Aunt May, of course, is like, I need to find out who's hurting my poor, nephew. And Peter Parker's about to tell her, basically tell his secret identity. And then all of a sudden, Mary Jane comes in. Hey, Slugger. And he says, oh, never mind. And Aunt May looks at Mary Jane accusingly like, are you beating up my nephew? Are you like a boyfriend abuser? And then we see Spider-Man in a team up with Cable. They make this kind of funny joke about Rob Liefeld's pouches and pockets thing, where Cable's like, yeah, I got the access card is in one of these pockets. And it takes him, of course, like 5 minutes because he has so many pockets and pouches. Meanwhile, Spider-Man's getting his ass beat by all these Doom bots. And then once again, he's beat up. And this little kid just says, yo, Parker, what happened to you? And finally, Peter Parker's like, I just gotta say I'm fucking Spider-Man. That's why I'm tired of lying. And this kid says, yeah, I'm fucking Luke Cage. I'll give you $1 if you want to pass. Peter Parker gives him $1 and just walks on. He's just beaten. He's defeated. Now we have Colossus Metal Mirror. This is another comic by Paul Hornschemeier. And we see Colossus, and he's fighting a doppelganger of himself. Now, his captions, though, are more serene. He's talking about how he loves to visit this field near the X mansion because it reminds him of Siberia. Even though it's more green, it's just very, undeveloped. And he just misses home a lot. And so now this guy attacks him who looks just like Colossus. Turns out it's a robot made by Arcade. This robot's really well made, so Colossus is having a hard time fighting him off, defeating him. And the comic just ends in a weird way where it just ends with them still struggling. Even says, battling myself with no victor predicted. So we just don't know what's going to happen. Now we get another great Tony Millionaire comic. The Mighty Thor, brand pickled herring, product of Asgard. And we see Thor. I guess his powers have weakened. So he's just literally selling this brand pickled herring at a carnival. I guess because he lost his hammer. And so without his hammer, he's pretty weak. I love this Tony Millionaire. All these rando people eating this pickled herring. Then we see on the roller coaster ride, we see this character, Muddo and Can Man. And Thor is worried because he sees the do not stand up sign on the roller coaster, and Muddo stands up. So Thor feebly attempts to save them. He can still fly using these little wings on his helmet. And then, unfortunately, he startles Can Man, who falls off the roller coaster. Muddo is just fine. Muddo didn't get hit by the sign. And then Muddo attacks Thor. And then it turns out that Muddo, inside of his body, when Thor punches him, he has Mjolnir, his hammer, inside of him. So he grabs it, he becomes super strong again. And Muddo just says, yeah, you left it outside your house on the porch. So of course I took it. Very weird. It ends with Thor canning him, mixing the two of them to make canned mud. Next we have Wolverine and Power Pack. And this is by David Heatley. This is a very weird one. So we see Wolverine bragging about how great he is. We see all those villains drawn crappily. And he teams up with Power Pack. And he accidentally cuts one of the little kids in Power Pack. And Wolverine feels terribly guilty. He's like, in fact, I have to go to Japan until I can learn to control my animal nature. So he goes to like a Buddhist temple and he meditates for 90 days. Finally, his claws pop back into his body. The whole time they were out. So he realizes that he's calm enough to re-enter normal society. He goes back, he apologizes to the little girl from Power Pack. Such a weird little story. And just like David Heatley drawing this is just so... It's like basically a comic drawn by a 10-year-old. On the opposite end of the spectrum is this fucking gorgeous comic by Farrell Dalrymple. You Won't Feel a Thing. And this is a retelling of the first encounter between Silver Surfer and Spider-Man. It doesn't seem like he changes much, but he does. We see Spider-Man's thoughts, and he's way more neurotic than he is in the comics. He's a basket case, just constantly just like, oh my God, all these things, all these problems. What a jerk Flash Thompson is. He's just like all of us. All of our shitty negative thoughts in a day where we're like, oh God, I hate that guy I work with. And now we see Silver Surfer. It's very typical of, Silver Surfer from the 60s. Just whining and being like, oh, Earth, so beautiful. And yet why does man constantly war with himself? What could be a paradise is made a hell by their actions. And so Silver Surfer's just hanging out in New York City. Spider-Man confronts him, of course, in Marvel fashion. Whenever two heroes meet, they have to start fighting through some confusion. God, this art is so nice, though. Farrell Dalrymple's pretty amazing. And then Spider-Man makes it back to his apartment, and he just freaks out. He starts smashing his furniture. I'm such a loser. I'm such an idiot. But Silver Surfer sees him outside the window and gives him a little cosmic beam that calms him down and makes him feel a little less full of turmoil. Not really much of a story, but kind of interesting just for the art. I kind of like this guy, John Vermillier, Crisis in the Lair of Modoc. His is just really fun. almost underground-y type style. We see Modok, he's defeating the Avengers. Ant-Man is the last Avenger standing, so he rides a little ant into his nostril, and then he starts pulling his nostril hairs, ripping them out. And Modok is like, ow. He's like, what is that? Oh, my tiny hands, I can't pick my own nose to find out what it is. So now Ant-Man's going to get serious. He's going to start punching his nasal passages, and Modok's really feeling it. But then finally Modok realizes, oh yeah, I upgraded my hands. I can extend my fingers. So he's basically going to pick his nose and take care of this. And finally he rams the extended finger in. He kills Ant-Man's flying ant. And Ant-Man's so sad. Go into the light, my friend. But now he's really pissed off. So he decides to use his growing powers. I like how the whole time the Avengers are just these cringing, crying, cowardly blobs. The whole time they're just like, no, no. But Ant-Man grows until his hand, giant hand comes out of his nostril, and then his whole arm comes out. And then he punches him in the face. Really goofy, but I really like it. It's just really like fun, gross kind of art. We got the creator biographies again, and then next issue's cover, which is nothing to write home about. So it's interesting. We were just looking at Schizo number 4 like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was by Ivan Brunetti. And everything I said about his new style, I mean, I still kind of liked it, but this is just too much. This is just like, there's no joke in here. It's just like, oh, I'm going to draw all the Marvel characters super cutesy. I mean, this might as well be those troll dolls from the 70s. So like, not even attempted a gag, just like it's a gym, and all these Marvel superheroes are working out in various ways, and they're drawn super cutesy. What? Bugs the hell out of me. I don't like it. Especially considering like 10 years before that, he probably would have made the most hilarious cover ever. Marvel probably rejected it for being too foul, but it would have been funny. So now we see this continuing story of the Watcher and his friend. I guess the Watcher has broken the Watcher code, the laws, and he's condemned to this like surgery, this lobotomy. Philip is dragged away, and he's crying, saying, don't erase his mind. It's not his fault. Okay, the first story we have is How Mjolnir Got Its Strap. And this is story and art by Terry Moore of Strangers in Paradise fame. Never a fan of Strangers in Paradise. I think I bought the first issue when it came out, and I was like, oh man, you really wish you were Jaime Hernandez, but you don't have 1/50th amount of talent. But I gotta say, I kind of like the art in this. It's him drawing very cartoony, and I like it. So we see Thor, and every time he tries to swing his axe, his hammer and fly, it kind of falls out of his hand, and he's got to go retrieve it. So this is the time when Thor was like banished on Earth, when I think Odin kicked him out for being too haughty. So he keeps losing his hammer. He keeps having to chase after it. He makes it to this little town. It's very like Monty Python and the Holy Grail type humor. People are like, mud clouds, all you can carry for half a penny. Mange for sale, get your mange. So he says, where's the tavern? I want a drink. It's actually pretty funny too. I can't read every joke, but it is kind of witty and kind of funny, which is something I never associated with Terry Moore before. And then this other guy shows up. At first we don't know who it is. It's this little guy with a weird horned helmet. And he says, did he come this way? Talking about Thor. And they point to the tavern. Of course, those of you more sharp-minded than me, it's Loki. It's this cartoony version of Loki. So he comes into the tavern, sees it's Thor, and he says, oh, I'll get him. That pig I'll turn the pig into a woman and make Thor fall in love with the pig. No one else will see her as a woman, so Thor will look like the fool who's falling in love with a pig. And he does. Even though the whole time this woman's just going, squee! Also, Thor's like a big, conceited jerk. He's all like, you can feast with me and tell me many flattering things. I need someone who will iron my tunic. He wouldn't be a very good boyfriend. The whole time the woman's acting like a pig. She's just shoving her face in the food. When she does, she splashes these four like dollops of gloop onto Thor's chest, almost like his costume. And everyone's looking at him like a freak. And he basically says, I'm going to marry this woman. But then when he says, drinks on me, everyone gets excited. So Thor's happy. Loki leaves. And finally he looks in a mirror and sees that his wife is a pig. And once again he throws his hammer and loses it. And someone just says, you should really put a strap on that thing. He also says, the other guy says, you have something on your shirt. So Thor found his hammer, added a strap, and he could swing faster, fly further, and strike with more fury. But he never got the stains out of his shirt. Oh my God, this is amazing. So next we have Silver Surfer by James Stokoe. Look at this first page. Just savor it. Let it trickle into your eyeballs. This is fucking insane. Galactus is destroying this planet. We see every building intricately drawn, collapsing, and the Silver Surfer is flying in front of him. God, even like Galactus, he just adds all this detail that nobody ever has drawn on Galactus before. Galactus doesn't have all this shit usually. But James Stokoe can't help himself. So, it's a skull planet. And we see these 3 squirrels on the roof. And they're just calmly playing poker and drinking. Silver Surfer shows up and says, your world is crumbling around you, yet you don't flee. What are you doing? And they're like, we're playing this like poker-like game. And Silver Surfer says, I think I would like to play. I'm curious. So they deal him in. The whole time Galactus is just dissolving the planet. And Silver Surfer actually wins, even though he's never played this game before. And even though they know they're about to die, so they just basically curse Silver Surfer. Because they know he's the Herald of Galactus, but they're like, let's play poker with him. And then we just see this sad panel. God, this is beautiful. The way he's framed by the ruins of the planet. Next we have Benjamin Marra story, a very typical Benjamin Marra. It's U.S. Agent versus the Terrorsaur. And we see U.S. Agent totally just hanging out at this like dream bar if you're a frat boy. Every woman there is hot. Hot as hell, and they're all blondes. This government guy shows up and says, U.S. Agent, the CIA wants to hire you. There's a terrorist who's been genetically spliced with the DNA of a velociraptor. He has a nuclear warhead strapped to his back. We call him the Terrorsaur. If you neutralize him, we'll give you $5 million. It's so amazing Benjamin Marra does that. He somehow works really hard to duplicate really shitty artists from the 80s, like black and white boom type artists. Because I've seen when Benjamin Marra actually draws really well. He can. I think he could then too. But that was his aesthetic. He liked to try to draw like that. So USA Agent with this reporter who's actually antagonistic to him. At first she's just all like, oh, you're just a narcissistic macho asshole. And then the Terrorsaur attacks. Of course, he swipes at the woman, and of course he rips her clothes off, so she has this completely sexy lingerie under her outfit. So she has to run around in that for the rest of the story. U.S. agent attacks the pterosaur, gouges his eyes out, kicks him in the nuts, and then he blows his brains out. And his act of brutality makes the reporter just totally fall in love with him. And she's just like gonna be his willing sex slave, it sounds like. So Benjamin Marra. This next one's really interesting. It's a machine man, ectoplasmic and mysterious occurrences investigator. I mean, it's mildly interesting because Machine Man never did that. For some reason, Tim Hamilton, the writer and artist, was just like, oh yeah, I'll do this angle on Machine Man. But what I find interesting is that I only know Tim Hamilton from the 80s. He did this Malibu black and white comic called The Trouble with Girls. It wasn't very good. He wasn't a very good artist. And this is really good. He, in the, I don't know what, 20 years in between, he really developed this great style. I was very impressed because I never saw anything in between. So I was just like, what? How did Tim Hamilton get this good? So basically he goes to Agatha Harkness's house. And I guess all the other mystic heroes can't help. So she needs Machine Man to help her. This art is really nice. And so then Morbius shows up. And I guess he's been stealing little young girls' hearts and feeding them to this ancient demon Baphomet. And he only needs one more heart for Baphomet to be resurrected permanently. So, of course, Machine Man's going to stop him. I wonder what else Tim Hamilton does. Really like this art style. And they bring up, it's very corny. They bring up the whole, like, you know, like, oh, can a robot feel emotions? He tries to cure Morbius. He says, actually, with my, I'm a living computer. I could take a drop of your blood and make a cure for you. And it comes out of his tear duct. He's like, no, this isn't a tear. This is your cure. But then the rain comes and washes it away. I don't know why he couldn't just do it again. But Morbius just flies away and says, this is all bullshit. And then Machine Man is so sad. He says, I have no tear ducts, but I feel I must cry. In Tim Hamilton's favor, I'm pretty sure he knows it's sarcastic. It's a joke. I don't think he really means it. Next, we have Kate Beaton, who I believe we saw in either the last issue or the one in the first series. And we see Rogue. She's in the X Mansion, grooving to her Walkman. She knocks over Professor Xavier's best vase, his favorite vase. And then he finds her, and he just says, she's holding a cute kitten, so he says, oh, I can't stay mad at you. Pretty, overall, just very crappy in every aspect. Next, we have The Left Hand of Boom, story and art by Dean Haspiel. And this is about one of the worst characters created in the 70s at Marvel, Wood God. So Wood God is hanging out with the Celestials. Basically, they've punished him for misusing his powers. They have these like weird shackles on his neck and his wrist that kind of keep them together so he can't lift up his arm to bring down the Left Hand of Boom. So now he meets Alicia Masters. And I guess they used to date. He says, would you be my queen? She says, no, I'm involved with someone else. Of course, The Thing. He says, if you don't, break up with him and become my wife, I'm going to sink America into the sea with my apocalypse fist. She says, you're bluffing. He says, you have 24 hours to decide. Now we see the Thing. He's confronted by Wood God. And then he says, I really wish I could play stickball again like I did when I was a kid. So Thing, using his amazing strength, just pushes his head away from the wrist and breaks the little bond that kept him close so he could play stickball. And so the Celestials see this and they banish him to another dimension. Or actually, they turn him into a sentient gas orbiting Earth's atmosphere. Next, we have 155 Hero, Hero for Hire. And this is by... Oh, where am I now? Sorry, I gotta get to the next issue. Number 3. This is by... Eduardo? Nope. This is by Toby Cypress. Not familiar with him. And we see this girl reading an old issue of Luke Cage. There's a number in it. She says, I wonder if this phone number still works. They call up, and it's Luke Cage. He basically stops this robbery, stops these criminals. The little girls say, really cool. That's it. Pretty much a waste of pages. The style's not that bad. It's kind of interesting. In this weird, I don't know, painterly, wispy style. Next we have Michael DeForge. I totally forgot he was in this. And we see Spider-Man and Rogue and Iceman. And Spider-Man's basically saying, what's up with this Wolverine dude? Isn't he a little too old to be hanging out with kids all the time at the school? And, oh, I'm sorry, this is Jubilee. Iceman's giving her shit about, like, aren't you practically his boyfriend? You guys always hang out all the time. And then she, like, zaps him with her powers and she accidentally kills him. She melts him, so he's dead. She's freaking out, of course. Spider-Man says, I gotta go. I just got into the Avengers. I'm not gonna get kicked out over this. So later on, we see Iceman. He's just like this puddle. You still see his face. He's still saying, help. He's like a sentient puddle. A little dog shows up, and he just rubs himself in the water like dogs will do. And he's like, what are you doing? Stop. So now his sentience is in the dog's fur. And eventually he just dribbles off the dog, and he's just a smear on the sidewalk. Very weird. Really like the art, though. Especially these first panels, this first page here. Just this stuff is great. The weird trees in the background and the foliage. Next we have Alex Robinson, box office poison guy. Fantastic Before. How we see a young Reed Richards and Ben Grimm before they became superheroes. Reed Richards goes on a blind date. Ben Grimm fixed it up. There's this kind of goofy looking woman named Grub, but it turns out she's a brilliant scientist and an entomologist, to be specific. And Reed Richards loves talking to her. He's like, oh, have you been reading about Henry Pym's research in ants? But then he's such a nerd, he never calls her back. He's always just like, maybe after finals. She liked him too, but she just thinks she did something wrong. So finally, she says, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I'm going to go knock on his door. Of course, Victor Von Doom, his roommate, opens the door. Says, Reed's not here, and he's also a total dick. And so she writes a message for Reed on the dry erase board. Basically like, hey, we should hang out again. But then the whole room explodes. This is the famous explosion where Victor Von Doom became scarred. And now we pop back to the present. We see Reed. And, he's married to Sue Storm. But this was all like a little reverie in his head. And things like, snap out of it. The mole man's attacking. You're lost in your thoughts there. He said, sorry about that. Just overcome by some nostalgia. And when they get in the ship, though, We see that it's named Grub after that woman. Reed says something like, "You'll be surprised at the things which a part of you never gets over, Johnny." And now we have Eduardo Medeiros. And kind of interesting, cutesy style. Probably an animator. That would be my guess. This is called With a Little Help from My Friends. And we see Spider-Man crash into this old lady's house. He says, "Can I use your phone?" Juggernaut's outside saying, "Come on, we ain't got all day. Let's get this fight over with. I got a dentist appointment at 3 p.m. So basically, Spider-Man calls up Ben Grimm and says, "Hey, Ben, what are you doing? Can you help me fight Juggernaut?" And he's like, "Well, I'm eating a sandwich, but okay." It makes it seem like all these superhero fights are just like this performative thing where they're just like, okay, it fits in my schedule. So then Spider-Man comes back out, but he's all like, "Hold on a second. The Thing's going to show up soon." So they're just like biding time. Thing shows up, and they have a fun brawl. Next we see, Kate Beaton again. This time it's written by Nick Gorrich, the Perry Bible Fellowship guy. We see Thor, Hawkeye, and Captain America at a fair. Thor does that little test of strength thing. He does really badly. It says "whittle baby." So Thor destroys the whole thing in anger. Pretty dopey. Now this one's so weird. Harvey Pekar meets the Thing. This is literally written by Harvey Pekar with art by Ty Templeton. Really nice art, by the way. I think, reading a bunch of American Splendors over the years, I think Ty Templeton is one of his best interpreters. We see Harvey Pekar. He's on the street, and Thing shows up. He says, "Hey, I talked to you." Of course, Harvey says, "Hey, Ben Grimm, I went to Hebrew school with you." And they kind of kibitz for a while. They talk about Hungarian Jews. Harvey says, "I'm about to retire because I made enough money from the American Splendor movie." So it's so weird. It's typical Harvey Pekar autobio, but he's talking to the Thing. He's talking about the same mundane things he would be talking about with any of his characters in his comics. Thing is worried about his future at Marvel. So he's like, "I hear you're going to retire from the VA, your fog clerk job. I was wondering, maybe, I'm not certain about my future at Marvel. I was wondering if you could put in a good word. Maybe I could get that job. I've got arthritis problems. It's hard for me to walk a lot. It'd be great if you could arrange it." So he just says, "Yeah, just, you got to pass your civil service test, and I'll put in a good word." That's so weird. And they exchange phone numbers, and Harvey walks off. This has got to be the weirdest comic ever. In fact, Harvey Pekar did this after a lifetime of just doing purely mundane autobiographical comics. He wrote himself meeting the Thing. It's crazy. We have the creator biographies once again. And then we have a final Watcher strip by Nick Bertozzi. Philip is sitting there playing with his dogs. And then Uatu shows up with he's totally lobotomized. But he puts a biscuit on his nose and the dogs lick his face. And even though he's lobotomized, he still laughs and giggles and enjoys it. This is dedicated to the memory of Harvey Pekar, who just died before this was published. Beautiful portrait by Ty Templeton. That's a great drawing of Harvey Pekar. And that's it for Strange Tales Part 2. I don't think they're ever going to do another one of these, especially the way Marvel is now. But these were fun as hell. And part of me can't believe they did it. It's like so cool that they just thought, it's just a fun idea. it probably didn't sell that great. They probably knew it wouldn't sell that great. They were just like, let's have fun. There's all these great artists out there. Let's give them a chance, see what happens. And it did make dividends. Like, Jonathan Hickman's in the first miniseries. He ended up becoming one of the hottest writers of Marvel. That could have been, the bridge that made that happen. And Raphael Grampá went on to do like Batman, Dark Knight Returns, the third one. So all these guys, a lot of them, they went on to actually be Marvel guys. Not many of them. I should say a few of them did. But really fun. And I just love these comics. Even though some of them are turds, just like all anthologies. They can't all be great. But so much interesting, fun shit going on in these comics. I totally, heartily recommend them. I'm pretty sure you'll find them in dollar boxes too. I don't think anyone gives a shit about these. I don't think they're collectible. They did collect these in a graphic novel, so you can buy that too. So thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully I'll sober up before next video and be a little more lucid. And hopefully I'll see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.